G'day there, my name is Jess Van Den and welcome to my jewellery studio. I have been running my online business Epheriell for over a decade and making rings all the while. But I've had a lot of my customers that have had issues with working out their ring size. And today I want to solve that problem for you by telling you and showing you exactly how to work out your ring size. I'm going to teach you all of the behind the scenes knowledge you need to make sure that you're doing it right. And then I'm going to take you through 6 different methods that you can use to work out your ring size from worst to best. And this does include methods that are pretty accurate that you can use if you can't get professionally sized, which as I'm recording this, it's January 2021, so I know a lot of you are stuck in lockdown because of COVID and probably can't get to a jeweler. So I'm going to solve that problem for you in this video and show you exactly what you need to do in order to get an accurate ring size first time. If you find this video helpful, please do give it a thumbs up, and I'd love to hear in the comments, have you ever come a cropper of this issue before? Have you ordered a ring online and it's just not been the right size? What happened? How did you fix the problem? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy videos on intentional living, self-employment, craft, health, happiness, and all the things about basically living an awesome life, please do subscribe to my channel. I talk about all of those things, and I also do a lot of videos to help fellow handmade business owners. So if that's you, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos on handmade business topics as well. The first thing you need to know is that there are tons of different sizing systems all over the world. A lot of countries and regions have their own system. Now, that's not really a problem because jewelers know how to convert from one system to another. So if you are buying from a jeweler in a different country, all you need to do is make sure that you give them, when you give them your ring size, they know where you are and what sizing system you're using. Now, a good jeweler will probably be able to figure that out just from what the number or letter you give them. They'll be like, okay, they're probably using this particular system. We can work it out because there's these amazing conversion charts that are available online. Now, there's the tricky thing about this is that there are different charts all over the place and some are more accurate than others. So when you are giving a jeweler your size, make sure they know what system you're using, but don't do the conversion for them because they probably will know the right chart that works for them. I have found that the ring sizing chart on Wikipedia is actually the most accurate one that I've come across. So that's a good one to use. But again, just give the jeweler, the size in your system and they'll work out the conversion if necessary into their system. So here in Australia, we work in letters. In the US, for example, you guys work in numbers. In some parts of Europe, they actually just use the internal diameter or circumference of the ring in millimeters, which is actually the international standard, is the internal diameter or circumference in millimeters, because that's the actual measurement of the ring, not using some other conversion system. So that's probably the most accurate one of all. And in some of our sizing things today, you're actually going to be working out your size in millimeters. So the next thing to know is that there's a few different ways of reading the size on a mandrel. So a jeweler's mandrel is what they're going to be using to check the size of the ring. Funnily enough, all of our tools are actually in US sizes because our tools were bought online and they came that way, even though we're in Australia. So I'm always converting from US to Australian, Australian to US. It's no big deal, it's easy to do for us. So when it comes to a jeweler reading the size on your mandrel, now I've come across this problem a few times where people have gotten sized by a jeweler and they've used a different method of reading the size off the mandrel. So if you do get sized by an actual jeweler, make sure to take note of which method they're using, and then when you speak to another jeweler that you're buying from, just check with them which method they're using. So the first one is the true diameter method. Now this is the most accurate as far as I'm concerned because it actually reads the diameter, the internal diameter of the ring in millimeters, which is really, that's how we're sizing our rings, right? So the way that works is when you drop a ring onto the mandrel, you read it from where the base of the ring sits on the mandrel, because that's the part of the inside of the ring that's contacting the mandrel. So that's the part that's actually getting the proper measurement. Some jewelers will use what's called the center line method, which is where they read where the middle of the ring sits on the mandrel. So if they are using that, it's not going to be equivalent across from the true diameter method to the centerline method. Now the exception to the rule here is if you're buying a comfort fit ring, they need to use the centerline method, because a comfort fit ring is actually curved on the inside. It's curved towards your finger. So the center of the ring is actually the narrowest part of the ring. So in that case, you actually do need to read the measurement from the center of the ring on the mandrel, because that's where the internal diameter is. That's the thinnest part, the smallest part of the ring. So that's another little tricksy thing that you may need to know about working out ring size, especially if you are getting sized by one jeweler and buying from another one. When you're actually testing your ring size, you actually need to do it a couple of times. Why? Because your hands aren't the same all the time. Your ring size actually fluctuates, and it can fluctuate quite a bit over the course of a day, even the course of a week. Now this can happen because of external forces, so heat and cold. So if you're cold, your hands will shrink. If you're hot, your hands will expand and get puffier. And you'll probably also find this happens across the day. So in the morning, when you wake up, your hands might be a bit more shrunken, and then at the end of the day, because you've been using them all day, they might actually be a bit more puffy. So when you are working out a ring size, do it a couple of times. So do it first thing in the morning, do it in the evening. You know, if you've been exercising, if you've been in a hot environment versus a cold environment, measure it in both environments. And that way you should be able to get a more accurate picture of your correct and comfortable ring size. Because if you size your hand or your finger when you're cold and your hand is shrunken, you're going to get a smaller size, and then when you get that ring and your hand is a bit more puffy, you might be like, oh, it's too small, like there's a mistake. But it's just that you haven't made account for how your hands will change and fluctuate over time. So that's a really important thing to be aware of. Also, make sure that your ring is snug on your finger. If you've never worn rings before and you're working out your size and you get your ring, you'll probably find it feels a little bit uncomfortable at first because you're not used to having something on your finger. So you might feel like it's too small, but it's actually just you're getting used to the sensation of having a ring on your finger. So make sure to give it a little bit of time. Like if you can get it off and on, and chances are it's not too small. It might just be that you're not used to it. Now, the size you pick is also going to be a little bit dependent on the shape of your hands. Now, if you're like me, you have knuckles that are bigger than the base of your finger. And that means you need to work out a size based on what you can get off and over, on and off over that knuckle. And you might find that when you get the ring to the base of your finger, it actually feels a little bit loose, right? I can kind of move it up and down. But that's because I have to make sure that it can fit off and on over my knuckle. So that's the dependent factor of the ring size. However, if you have the base of your finger that is the widest part, you need to make sure that it's really nice and snug on your finger, because you don't have a knuckle to stop it from falling off, okay? Those of us like me, it's a bit loose on my finger, but it's not going to fall off because it's not going to come over the knuckle without a little bit of effort. But if your base of your finger is the widest part, make sure it's really nice and snug, the size, because you don't want it to be falling off when you're just walking around, especially like I said, if you work out a size when your hands are a bit puffier and then you have the ring on when you get cold or your fingers shrink for some reason, and you're likely that your ring will just fall off. And we definitely don't want it to happen, especially if it's something like a wedding or an engagement ring that's a really special ring. So the last thing you need to know is the size of the ring, as in the width of the ring, will affect the ring size that you're going for. So you don't have just one ring size, you have a ring size dependent on the width of the ring you're buying, okay? So if you have a ring that is kind of 5 millimeters or less wide, so that's this dimension across your finger here, you can see on this hand, I've got a few different widths of rings. These are really thin ones here, and then a wider one, this is a 5 millimeter, this is a 3.7 millimeter, and these are about 1 millimeter wide, but they're a stack, so that'll affect things as well. You need to make sure that your size is correct for the width of the ring you're buying. So if you're buying a thinner ring, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So here are some professional sizing rings, okay? You can see with this one here, this is a narrow sizer. This is a wide sizer, okay? So if you are getting sized by a jeweler, chances are they have something like this. They might have individual rings as well that they use. Some of the fancier places will do that. But just know the size of the ring that you are going to buy, it'll depend which one of these you want to use. So chances are most men, they'll usually size men using the bigger one and women using the smaller one. But that's not really important. What is important is the ring that you're buying. So if you're buying a ring that's 5mm or less, use the thin sizer. If you're buying a ring that is 5mm, like more than 5mm, the thick sizer is going to be more accurate. The reason for this is because the wider a ring is, the slightly larger it needs to be in order to fit comfortably on your finger. And the narrower it is, the smaller it needs to be to fit comfortably on your finger. So talk about this with the jeweler you're buying from as well. Like, tell them how you figured out your ring size. This is really useful information because then they can help you to know, okay, is this going to be accurate enough, or do I need to help my customer, you, to work out a better way of doing it? Hopefully if you've watched this video, it won't be a problem. But basically, if a ring is a little bit bigger, it needs to be a smidgen bigger, a little bit wider, it needs to be a smidgen bigger in order to be comfortable on your finger. We tend to go by the rule of, if you've used any of these methods apart from getting sized by a wide sizer and you're buying a ring that's bigger than 5mm, we go up about 1/4 of a US size. So it's a little tiny bit, but it's just enough to make it that little bit more comfortable. Otherwise it can feel really tight and uncomfortable on your finger. Okay, so I think I've told you everything you need to know before we do the sizing. How about we get into the actual methods of sizing? Number 1, guessing. The amount of people who've messaged me and gone, I'm trying to buy a ring, maybe for someone else. They have average size hands. That does not help me. That does not tell the jeweler anything. What is an average size hand? Ring sizing is a very precise art and science, okay? Just guessing is never going to work. Now, there are sort of standards of average ring sizes for men and women, but like anything, an average is just like the most common or in the middle, right? So it's not necessarily going to be accurate. It's really important that you actually measure the size of the person that you are buying for. If it is a gift, some of these methods, or one of these methods in particular, might work. And if it is a gift and you're unsure, you might just have to wing it and realize that the ring is going to need to be resized after you've gifted it to the person. If that's the case, make sure you're buying a ring that can be resized. Sometimes more intricate rings can't actually be resized, so just be aware of that. If you are guessing, chances are you're going to have to get the ring resized. You're going to have to pay a bit more to do that. Make sure it's a ring that can be resized, and always size up. So get a size bigger than you think you're going to need, because it's easier to take size out of a ring than it is to put size back in. So make sure to err on the side of sizing up if you need to buy a gift and you have absolutely no idea about the person. Obviously, male and female is generally a helpful key indicator for the jeweler, because men do have bigger hands on average than women. But like, I have really big hands for a woman. Like all of my female friends, their fingers kind of come to here on me. So that wouldn't be particularly helpful if somebody, was guessing on the size for me. So it really does come down to the individual person. So guessing is really not a good idea, but if you have to do it, size up and buy a ring that can be resized, because it probably will need to be resized, especially if this is like a wedding or engagement ring that has to go on a specific finger. If it's just a ring that can go on any finger, then you have a better chance of them having a finger that it will fit. So keep that in mind. The second method is good old string. Okay, using a piece of string, wrapping it around the finger, and then measuring that. It's pretty terrible. The reason it's terrible is because string, like this is a piece of twine that I've got, it's pretty sturdy, it's not stretching very much. But when you wrap it around your finger, like how tight are you supposed to put it on the finger? And then how do you make sure that when you pull it off, you're measuring at exactly the right spot and you're not off by a couple of millimeters? Because I tell you what, when it comes to sizing rings, a couple of millimeters is a lot of difference. So it's a very inaccurate way of working at a size, and I strongly do not recommend using the string method unless you have absolutely no other choice. At least it will give you a ballpark figure within a couple of sizes of what it's going to be, but it really is not a very good choice because it's very hard to get accurate measurements, especially if you're using a really thin piece of string, you know, because as I said earlier, remember, the wider a ring is, the bigger it needs to be to fit. So if you're using a really thin piece of string to measure for a wide ring, it's going to be even more likely to be inaccurate. All right, so the next one, number 3, is using one of these paper measuring strips. So you see these around, you can print this off the internet, okay? And it's going to look something like this here. So it'll give you a measuring thing, and it's going to tell you exactly how big it needs to be, and it's going to give you instructions on how to do it. So basically what happens is you cut a line in here, you put it around your finger and you slip it through, and then you measure the size off here. Now again, this is really not a great choice, because if you look on this one particularly, it's only got whole sizes for starters. Sizes can be half or quarter sizes to be even more accurate, and that's really what you want. It can be a really big difference between one size and another. And again, how do you know you've printed it off the right scale? You know, it can be really frustrating to make sure that you've printed it off so that it is exactly the right scale. So that is more accurate than a piece of string if you've printed it off exactly the right size. That's a better option than string. It's still not particularly detailed. It's still not particularly accurate, because you can't get a really clear indication of your size. So again, it's not really one I recommend. It's only one I would recommend you use if you're desperate, and it's the absolute best case scenario. So again, not recommended, but it is better than string. So number 4, we're starting to get pretty accurate. This is where we're going to use something like this. So this is a plastic ring sizer that you can buy online for a couple of dollars. Now you can buy this version, which is where we have little rings that pop out, and on this particular one they actually have half sizes as well, which is fantastic because you're going to get a pretty accurate measure there. Now you'll notice these are quite thin, so again, if you're buying a thick ring, it's going to be, you know, you have to keep that in mind. But these are going to be pretty good. You can buy this version, or you can buy a plastic version of one of these ring sizes, the professional metal ones, again for probably under $10 online, and get it delivered to you. So again, I'm recording this in January 2021 during the middle of COVID, and a lot of you are in lockdown and you can't go to get your ring size professionally. So this is one of the better options for you. It's the second best option if you can't go to a jeweler. So, I mean, if you can get a metal one like this, it's probably going to be really accurate. But there's a caveat with that, and that is that you might not know for sure what's going to be best. Like, you might try it on and go, okay, that feels good, but a jeweler would go, hang on a second, it still looks a little bit loose, maybe go a little bit tighter. Just again, as I was saying earlier, you're not used to feeling a ring on your finger. So that's where having a jeweler with you can be really helpful, because they can give you that little bit of guidance. But still, that is what I recommend to my customers who can't get to a jeweler, is to buy one of these for a couple of dollars online, because you're going to get a pretty good size, a pretty accurate size, using one of these plastic sizes. Number 5 is the absolute best thing you can do apart from getting sized professionally, and that is measuring a ring you've already got. So if you already have a ring, I'll pull this one off. I'll show you a close-up of this as well. So you get a ruler with millimeter measurements on it. So you can use this in order to measure the internal diameter of your ring, and that's going to tell you almost exactly what size you need to get if you're getting another ring for that same finger. Now, of course, this is only going to work if you already have a well-fitting ring for that particular finger, and you may not. A lot of you won't. So this will only work in that circumstance. But it's a really, really great choice because you're getting a very accurate measurement. The only thing with this is you have to be very careful to make sure that you're measuring the exact center, so the widest point of the internal diameter, not the outside of the ring, the inside of the ring. Okay, so when you put it on the ruler, make sure to put one inside edge right on top of one of the millimeter measures. And I do recommend, if you can, use millimeters. You can use inches, but it's going to have to be converted to millimeters. So if you do have a millimeter ring, a millimeter ruler, please do use that. So I recommend that you actually put the internal edge on the 1, not the end of the ruler, because unless you have one of these like proper mechanical rulers where it's exactly, the edge of the ruler is exactly correct onto the, if you have one of those plastic ones, there's like a gap here at the beginning. So make sure that you put the beginning of the internal edge of the ring on the 1 and measure from there and count how many millimeters it is to the other side. Your jeweler will love you if you actually take a photo for them so that they can double check. So you want to take a photo directly down so that they can see where both edges of the ring sit on the ruler. And that's going to give you a super duper accurate measure of the size of your ring. The last method, of course, is the one I've been alluding to, and that is going and getting professionally sized. Of course, right now, as I record this, a lot of you in a lot of countries can't do that. But when things change and go back to normal, that is what I recommend that you do, is actually go and get professionally sized, because a jeweler, most jewelers, you know, in brick and mortar shops will be happy to do that for you for free, and they will be able to give you the most accurate ring size possible so that you get it right first time. And you can talk through all of these things with them, like, oh, what sizing are you using, the true diameter method or the centerline method? How wide is the ring? That I'm buying a ring that's 8 millimeters wide. Can I make sure that my size is going to be correct for that? All of those little details, they're going to be able to help you with that. So it is the best thing. And what I really strongly recommend you do if you do get sized by a jeweler is actually go to a couple. Go to a couple of different jewelers just to make sure that you're getting it right. Because again, like I said, some jewelers use slightly different methods, and you want to make sure that you're getting the most accurate reading. So go to a few different, at least 2 different jewelers. You know, if there's a mall near you, this shouldn't be difficult. There's probably more than 2 jewelers in there, and get them to all give you a size. And that way you'll have a really, really accurate measure of the ring size that you're going to need for the ring that you're buying online. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful, and it's taught you all you need to know about how to work out an accurate ring size if you're buying a ring online. Thanks so much. My name is Jess Van Den, and my jewellery business is Epheriell. If you want to check out and perhaps buy one of our eco sterling silver wedding rings, that'd be great. Check it out over at epheriell.com. I'll be back again with another video soon. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.